reasonable place to put them in the pecking order of things right now. And so just a quick conversation here came out. Are they going to turn this thing around? By Chiefs standards, sneaking into the bottom end of the playoffs is certainly not meeting their goals. Is this a team that can turn it around and become what they want to be?
Greeny, I feel like this show has been so depressing and so negative. Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm here as the positivity police, but I feel like if you have Patrick Mahomes, and I get it, before you guys hit me up on Twitter, I get that he is now part of the problem. Trust me, I've covered 4 Chiefs games, okay? So you don't have to tell me. But when you have somebody like Patrick Mahomes, you have a chance. I also watched the 11-0 Steelers lose in the first round of the playoffs last year. So I feel like anything is possible in the second half of the season. I did have one personnel exec say to me, Patrick really isn't doing anything different.
Right.
It's when he does not make mistakes, you can't stop him. The problem is he's always taken risks and he's looked like a magician. Now he's not.
I mean, I don't think that anyone thinks, or at least I don't think Patrick Mahomes is the problem. I think the offense is just fine. They could add the screen game back in. They could run the ball
more,
a little bit more to force them to force the defenses to cover the entire field. There are things that they can do. But they were, before last week, they were averaging more than 30 points a game. They were 4th in the league with scoring. That's not the problem. We need to get an answer for the defense. So if we think that the problem is Patrick Mahomes, you're watching the wrong game. Patrick is still as good as he's ever been. He's just making some of those tip balls, some of those fumbles. Those are things that happen to you.
Right.
Well, maybe a more reasonable way to put it is Patrick Mahomes right now isn't solving the problem.
That's fair.
Like whatever the problems have always been, you always say, yeah, but Patrick Mahomes will just he was like an eraser.
Yeah.
He's not erasing. These things are in ink now as opposed to being in pencil.
Right, and sometimes the turnovers that they have are in inopportune times. But I think in the long run, if you think about when the playoffs come, they're going to make the playoffs in my view.
Right.
Nobody's going to want to play them. Let's relax. They're still scary as hell.
Relax.
Perhaps, but Tennessee might be thinking, all right, I wouldn't mind running that one back again.
I bet you they don't.
That was not close.
I bet you they don't. They remember the playoffs before.
We'll see. All right, we will leave that there for the moment because we have huge college rivalries to get to this weekend. First off, we got Georgia, Florida. This is a monster game. Georgia could become the first team to clinch a spot in its conference championship game with a win and a Kentucky loss at Mississippi State. So that's one thing to watch for. Big Ten, monster game. Number 5, Ohio State. Number 20, Penn State. Buckeyes have won 25 straight in the conference. That's the longest active streak in the country. And in the Big Ten, a battle of unbeatens. 8th-ranked Michigan State, 6th-ranked Michigan. Under Jim Harbaugh, the Wolverines are 0-5 in road games against AP top 10 teams. Will this finally be the week? Will this finally be the year? Michigan and Michigan State, in fact, currently have the 5th and 8th best chances, respectively, of making the playoff, according to our All-State playoff predictor. Only Georgia and Alabama have a better than 60% chance to make it. And so with David Pollack with us all morning long, Paul and Heather get up with us here. It is always our delight to bring in Mr. Feinbaum and Heather Dinich here. So, Heather, let's start with this. A week from this morning, we will be talking about the first college football playoff rankings. So as of right now, who would be your top 4?
Right this second, Greeny, I have Georgia number 1 like everybody else. They're top 3 in offensive and defensive efficiency. I've changed the rest of it up, though. Number 2, I have Alabama. Since the loss to Texas A&M, they have outscored their opponents 101-33. And then at number 3, a little bit controversial, I have Ohio State. I know they lost to Oregon, but they are number 1 in the FBS in scoring offense, total offense. And quarterback C.J. Stroud is leading the FBS in QBR. And then at number 4, I have Cincinnati. They struggled on the road in Annapolis against Navy, but Luke Fickell said after that game they hadn't been tested yet. They passed this test. That's a really tough game to play on the road against the triple option offense. Guys, at this point, eye test has to matter, and I don't think that anybody I have ranked behind Georgia, Alabama, or Ohio State, if they played today, would beat those teams.
Okay, so that's a good one. But Paul, what do you think of Ohio State at 3?
I like it. I'm the kind of guy that back in grammar school, I would sit next to Heather and maybe occasionally look over at her paper because she's exactly right. And she's the smartest one in this room when it comes to the CFP. I struggle with Cincinnati. I agree that right now they have to be at 4 because Oklahoma has had so many issues, but I was so underwhelmed by the Bearcats Saturday at Navy. I know it may not have been a great test, but they played terribly. They put themselves in harm's way, and they better not do that anymore because the eye test is going to start mattering with this committee, Greeny.
Georgia, Alabama, we get, David. How about the Ohio State and Cincinnati positioning there? It's fascinating as we head into next week. What do you think of it, David Pollack?
Well, I think all of it's fascinating because, are you rewarding having 0 losses? Like, here's the thing. If you want to make a case for Ohio State, I don't have a problem with it. If you want to make a case for Oklahoma, I don't have a problem with that. Oklahoma looked sleepy against Kansas. They looked horrible, too. A lot of people are going to say that was bad. But also, Ohio State lost to Oregon. They looked bad and lost, and Oklahoma didn't. So this is the fascinating part. A new committee. What do you value? Do you value that 0 in the loss column, or do you look like the best team? Next week, we're going to start finding out when they start releasing their rankings for real, because I don't have a problem with either of it. I don't have a problem saying that you think Alabama's better than Cincinnati for what you've seen so far. But we've also seen Alabama struggle on several occasions as well. It ain't like Alabama destroyed Tennessee and put them away in the first half. That was a game in the third quarter, and then they ran away in the fourth.
I want to get to the Michigan of it all, Heather, because you don't have them up there, and they are one of those unbeaten teams that we're talking about. What's at stake for them in this game against Michigan State and Jim Harbaugh? If he wins this weekend, what would that do for his positioning in all of this?
Well, if he wins this weekend, we're going to start taking them seriously in the CFP race. But I don't know that they're going to catapult themselves into the top 4. Maybe for some people they will. But the bottom line is this. Michigan and Michigan State still have to play Ohio State. And to me, the loser of this game is in a very precarious position because you certainly can't lose both of those games. So ideally, Michigan wants to win this game and have some margin for error against the Buckeyes, because consider this. If their only loss of the season is a close one to the Big Ten champs, what is the selection committee going to do with the Wolverines? I think they've got a shot, but it depends on what happens in those other Power 5 conference championship games.
Paul, I feel like I ask you this every week. Is this the year? Is this the week for your guy, Jim Harbaugh?
No, it is not. Greeny, you said a minute ago, going to the break, do I trust Jim Harbaugh? Let me ask you a question. If a telemarketer called you this afternoon and said, hey, Greeny, do you mind giving me your Social Security number? No, I don't trust Jim Harbaugh. And you wouldn't give the telemarketer your number. I've got to see it to believe it. And I haven't seen it since he's been there. And it's not about Michigan State Saturday. It's about Ohio State. He can't beat Ohio State.
He's got to beat Michigan State for it to matter, though, Paul. So will he? David Pollack, I'm coming to you, the player in the group here. Is he going to beat? Because Michigan State, if people aren't paying attention to them, they're good. Who do you like in this? Well, how do you see this game?
They are good. And Michigan doesn't have a wide margin for error because they're not really explosive offensively, but they're a very complete football team. But they've also flirted around with Nebraska, and so did Michigan State. I think this is a competitive game. I think it's a low-scoring game. I think Michigan will, thank goodness for you and Paul, Greeny, that you can continue, because I think Michigan will win, and you can continue to ask him about him next week, and the next week maybe.
Every single week. And by the way, right now, I'm getting calls, Paul, from telemarketers, and I promise, in your honor, I'm not giving them any information whatsoever. Guys, thank you. Heather and Paul, the best. Thanks for getting up here. So much good college coming up this weekend. Meanwhile, as we continue, first he loses his favorite target. Now he loses another. Is there anything Aaron Rodgers can do